From Little League to the big leagues and everywhere in between. From one stage to another. Passion is my middle name. I'm J.J. Davis. This is In Focus. We got a really great show for you today. Two guys who mean everything to everybody in their respective fields. Now, first up, I first remember this guy when he did live morning cut-ins for one of the competing television stations. And you know, I always thought he did a really nice job. Next thing you know, he's on the radio. Next thing you know, as the rest, as they say, is severe. That's right. Joining me right now, it's my honor to introduce to you Michael Severe. That's M-I-K-E with an apostrophe L.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
What's the apostrophe about?
So I went to Catholic school. And if you know Catholicism in the 70s and 80s, everybody was named Michael. And in my class of 8 boys, there were 5 boys named Michael. One boy went by a middle name, another kid went by a last name, one kid went by Mike. I went by Mike L. The L stands for the little lover. That's what my nickname was as a little kid because I like to smooze a lot. And so, yeah, Mike L. And it's been there. I've had that since 5th grade.
All right, now you were one of what, 6 kids?
Oh, so
you were the youngest?
Yeah, I'm by far the youngest. My closest sister to me is 8 years older than me. My sister Veronica is 8 years older than me. Yeah, I'm by far the youngest. My oldest sister, Audrey, is 86 years old. My dad was born in 1910. He had me in 1969.
What was that like growing up as the youngest in such a spread out family?
Well, the thing is, so many of them weren't around. They were gone. They had their own families. We used to joke, I have nieces and nephews who are 20 years older than me.
Yes.
You know, Uncle Michael, I'm a little kid. But it was great. You know, I ended up in New Orleans when my dad passed, and my first cousin, Juanita, adopted me. And so her 3 daughters became my sisters. And I lived in New Orleans starting when I was 10 years old, all the way through high school, with Veronica, Bernadette, and Donna being my sisters. That was the family I knew.
Wow. And you did say as part of the family, you moved around a lot.
I moved a lot.
The Crescent City, my formative years.
Yes. Well, I got there, like I said, in 10. But when I was born in Los Angeles, California. And my birth mother, left me there. And my dad called my first cousin, Juanita, and said, I know you have 3 daughters. You've always wanted a son. Hey, this boy is in California. Would you like to go get him? Wow. And literally, she got on a plane for one of the first times in her life and flew out there. This is 1969.
Wow, right.
There's no internet.
Right,
but she has an aunt out there, Aunt Elizabeth's out there, her mother's sister, and she tracks her down through the yellow pages, or the white pages, I guess, and they come and meet her. They take her to this hospital. It was a hospital for unwed mothers. She comes and gets me and takes me back to New Orleans. And I'm in New Orleans for 3 years. And my dad, who had already had a heart attack, was like, you know what, I'd like to be with my son, comes and takes me and says he's just taking me for a couple of weeks. I came back 7 years later.
Who are you a spitting image of, your mom or your dad?
Everybody tells, well, my mom, who I really don't know well, I saw her a couple times when I was a little kid, but my dad, a lot of people say, the older I get, the more gray, the more I look like my father. My father was a big, broad-shouldered man,
right?
Barrel-chested, lifted a lot of weights, long before weights were a big thing.
Monster, he was a monster.
And he was a chef, and so he always wore white, and they called him Docky, because like a doctor, and that was his nickname, Henry Docky Severe.
Do you have any nicknames in high school? Did you play any sports in high school?
Well, I was easy. So, you know, they either called me the apostrophe, people called me apostrophe L, or my last name is conducive for it, so it's Severe. So I grew up actually playing tennis for most of my childhood. My middle sister, who just passed away in July, was a huge tennis player, and when I moved to New Orleans, she got me into tennis. And I started playing tennis, and I loved Jimmy Connors coming to the net, and I loved McEnroe, and I loved Borg, and I loved all those guys. And then when I got to like 8th grade, I started playing football.
Right.
And played football. I tore my knee up really badly for my sophomore year, and then went and just finished playing tennis. And so I played tennis pretty much until I was probably 40. I played tennis on a regular basis.
Isn't that funny? Because I was a tennis guy too, and I called myself the Rocket after Rod Laver.
Rod
Laver guy, but really, I stunk, actually. I wasn't really that good.
I was a McEnroe guy. I was right-handed. I would try to do his serve,
yes,
hurting my back, trying to get his back as far as he would.
Yes, because he slices
so
much.
he had that big cut serve. So yeah, I was. I still watch it occasionally, but not like I used to. You know, sports fall away the older you get, the things
Correct.
we're really into.
But you still know the game because when I watch it and I listen to the commentators, one of my big bugaboos all the time when I was on TV as a sports guy, sportscasters never identified who was in the far court and who was in the near court. They just assumed everybody knew, and that always used to tick me off.
Yeah, and you know, it's easier now because we can actually see them. When we were growing up, the TV quality wasn't as good, and you knew the difference between a Borg and a mackerel, but some of the guys looked a lot alike. It was hard to tell, back then.
When did you say to yourself, you know, maybe I'll levitate to TV? Was it when you went to Sam Houston State and graduated? When was it?
1980. The Saints we had season tickets. My
Dome,
mom,
baby, Superdome.
My mom's husband, MC was his name. He was kind of like formative in me growing up. He made me a Saints fan for the most part. So we went to Saints games, and our seats were right below the Monday Night Football booth. And so Howard Cosell's in the booth, and I'd stand up on the chair because I loved Howard Cosell. I did an impersonation of him, loved him. And so I got a chance a couple times to meet him up there. From that moment on, I wanted to do TV. I either wanted to be one of two things. I wanted to be the next Howard Cosell, which was literally impossible, or I wanted to be the center square.
There was only one.
I wanted to be the center square on Hollywood Squares. One of those two things. That's what I wanted to be as a child. And so, Paul Lynn, whoever was in the center square, that's where I wanted to be. And so then, but when I went to high school and college, I actually wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to fix kids. I wanted to be a pediatric doctor, whether it be a surgeon or whatever else. I wanted to make kids healthy because I saw so many young kids when I was growing up that had all these different syndromes, ended up having two myself, but I always wanted to be that. But then math hit me. I had math, like many journalists, smacked us down. And so I moved on. I ended up going to the Army after that. After 1 year in college, I'm like, this is not working. I gotta do something else. So I joined the Army. I get in the reserves. I do that. I end up getting active for a while because Desert Storm happens. Eventually I come back and I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do with my life. And I go back to working at Kroger. And one of the kids who was like 15 when I left was now at the RTF program at Sam Houston State. He said, come visit. I went up there for a weekend. I'm like, this is awesome. And that was it.
All right, so you graduate with a degree in broadcasting, a minor in sociology. Why?
Well, it's kind of these classes I took. So I had taken so many anatomy, physiology, and all these classes about being a doctor, including a bunch of sociology classes, death and dying and things like that, that it was just there. All I needed was a couple more hours to get the sociology minor. So while I was at Sam Houston, I took those. But it was all about radio, television, film, that school. Because, you know, I was in the Dan Rather Communication Building. I was there when we brought Dan to dedicate him. We had a giant statue, statue of Sam.
The Rather Roll.
You know, Rather was there, and he was awesome to meet. So it was a great place to learn how to become a journalist.
All right.
Because so many people before had become
First TV job, what? Monroe, Louisiana?
Monroe, Louisiana.
You're a news reporter and a sports reporter. I've been there. That's how I started.
I was a 3-2 guy, right? So 3 days a week, I did news, and the 2 days they needed me for sports were Tuesdays, because that was Louisiana Tech and Grambling's media day. So I went to those, and then Friday Night Football. So they needed me for those 2 days.
I remember standing on a bridge in Spokane, Washington, talking about the GNP, and all I knew was RBI.
Right.
And I don't even know what the heck I was talking about. Bring back memories?
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, see, the news part of it kind of came easy to me. It really did. I love sports, but there's something about it. I told Mike Sigmund years ago, you may remember Mike Sigmund.
Oh, yeah,
when Mike left the business, I said, Mike, you will become a better sports fan because you've left being in sports. Because you're in sports, and many times you're editing for the next show, you're doing everything, you're not actually watching. Once you get away from it, you become better. So when I was doing news, I felt I was kind of a better sports fan than when I was actually doing sports full time. I love the news part of it. I love the news here.
It just makes you more grounded. So
I believe
to speak,
so,
more
yes.
worldly. You're more aware of things.
Big time, yeah.
How'd you get to Omaha?
It was weird. So I was in Albuquerque, and I'd met my wife. We started dating when she was in New Orleans going to Tulane, and I was in Monroe. It's about a 3.5-hour drive. It's the length of the Jim Rome show. I would listen to that on the way. And so then I ended up getting the job in Albuquerque as the education reporter. I completely left sports, and I was the education reporter there for 4 years. My then girlfriend, now wife, came there to live with me. And then she's from here, and her mother got sick, and she got put in hospice. And so my wife moved back here to help take care of her mother. This was January of 2001. Saints won their first playoff game that day she left. It was amazing, beat the Rams. Anyway, so she leaves, and then about 3 months later, I'm in the kitchen in Albuquerque at the TV station there, sister station of KTV. And there's an opening for a morning reporter. I already knew Roseanne because I'd applied for the job that Suzanne Deo, people who go way back, got the job. I'd applied for that. So I knew Roseanne. My mother-in-law, who ended up passing away, she was she did the noon show a lot of times for them because she was with 4-H. So they would bring her in. So she knew my soon-to-be wife, and they brought me in for an interview, and they said, hey, look, you're going to take a big pay cut to drop that many markets. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm coming for love, whatever else. And so I ended up coming in here. And
Coming for love.
I came for love. And
We all do.
Exactly. And that's how I ended up in Omaha. I came here. It was in 2002. And we thought we'd stay 3 years, do a 3-year contract, and we'd be off someplace in a TV
Yeah, I've
market.
been there before.
We had kids. I got a second job doing sports talk, and I'm here 22
All
years
right,
later.
talk about jobs.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Remember these?
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's right.
Stopwatch.
The old days, baby, when
Yeah.
we used real stopwatches, not
Yeah.
our phones. I
Right.
still had this, kept it forever.
Nice.
I'm going to give you 20 seconds. I want you to tell me all the current jobs you're involved with, gigs you're involved with right now. Ready?
Sure. I'm the executive director of the Judd Award Foundation. That's the number one thing. That's my full-time job. Sunday mornings after Nebraska games, I do severe reaction. Thursdays, I record a podcast called the Let It Fly podcast. And then I also fill in occasionally on the radio shows they need
5
me.
seconds.
I fill in on shows they need me around town. That's pretty much my gigs. Yeah, that's what I do.
Not bad. 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Do you ever relax?
Oh, no. Doing what I do on Sunday morning with Severe Reaction following Husker games
Yes.
is incredibly relaxing. So I don't know how you'd say this, but I think the thing I've done best in my life is live, put me live.
Yes.
Give me a breaking news situation.
Yes.
That's what I do well. I've always done that well since I was a little kid. But that's the same thing. I like to be able to watch that game, look at the game, analyze it all, and then on Sunday morning, hours later, then be able to regurgitate all of it, and whatever questions people call about, I try to be able to have the answer.
But I also think that's where age comes in, experience, gravitas. Agree?
Well, I had it was a general manager. When I was at KTV, there was a general manager who worked out of Kansas City who came to visit us. And he looked at all of our live stuff. And he loved what I did, but he said, you know what I would like for you to do is punctuate one thing more than you're doing. You're covering a lot of stuff, but in my live shots, I'd rather see one thing. And that really changed me in terms of the way I did my live shots. I really did punctuate that one great point. I had things around it. We made sure we had a follow-up question from the anchor. I love that. But that really changed it. And I think as I got older, I understood that more. You have to be able to pick one thing out of the big picture of a Nebraska win or loss, and that helps people better
All right,
understand.
well, you pick a lot of things when it comes to food.
Yes, I love
He's
food.
actually a connoisseur of food. Explain that,
Well, my
Mr.
dad-
New Orleans.
As I told you, my dad was a chef.
Right.
My grandmother cooked a lot. Actually, I call her my grandmother. She's really my aunt. She's my dad's sister. Mama, she cooked a lot. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen. I love great food. Obviously, I love great food. I love being taken care of in a restaurant.
Right.
I love when someone caters to you, right? It's from growing up. My grandmother catered to us. My dad was a caterer at the end of his career. I love that part of it. And so what happened was when I moved here, there weren't a lot of chef-driven restaurants. There's a lot of national places when I moved to Omaha, which was kind of sad. But as we got the years gone by, I got a cooking show. I did a cooking show for a long time. And so Take Me Into Your Kitchen restaurant, sponsored it. It was great, and I loved it. And I got to meet a bunch of chefs, and they were young at the time. Now all those guys have 1, 2, 3 restaurants.
Right.
And so that's kept me
Do
involved.
you watch the shows, cooking shows?
Oh, I do. Well, we watch several shows. I watch a show called Will Somebody Feed Phil? Phil goes around the world. He was a former producer of Everyone Loves Raymond.
Okay.
Funny guy. Goes around the world, and they just feed him. I kind of tried to recreate the show. I did a podcast called Run the Damn Kitchen. Kind of based off of football, run the damn ball.
Run the damn ball.
And I did that kind of the same way. You go to a restaurant, like we went to a place called Koji, and we had the chef there, David. Just feed us and talk to us. Tell us why you're making this dish. Why the story of food is the best thing about food other than eating it.
And the story of Michael Severe, that's just a part of it. That's just a piece, just maybe a slice of pie on his plate of food. Yeah. Listen, I want to thank you very much. I mean,
no
your
problem.
energy,
Thank you very
I
much.
can relate to
love
your
that.
energy.
No one has more energy
That's
than J.J.
Michael
Davis.
Severe, that's M-I-K-E with an apostrophe L.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show today. Next up, we got a man of 1,000 faces and voices after the break. All right, now for my next guest. Again, this guy means everything to everybody in the Omaha Metro Arts Theater community. I call him the man of 1,000 faces, plus also the man of 1,000 voices. Sitting right next to me right now is the Honorable Cork Ramer. Honorable?
At times, I have moments.
You have your moments? What does that mean?
Well, there are times when I'm not so honorable.
I think we can all say that. Now, of course, when I sent you the email you want, and you made it a point, I'm retired. You know, I sound like Mickey Mouse compared to him. I'm retired. What's retired to Cork Ramer?
Retired means that I no longer have a steady paying job.
Have you ever had a real job in your life?
Yeah, I've done lots of things. For a majority of my life, I worked only as an actor.
That's
all I
correct.
did. That's all I ever did was work as an actor. But I have done many things. I worked as a security guard at a nuclear plant here in Nebraska. You should all be very afraid.
Cork Ramer as a security guard, one, but at a nuclear plant? Two?
Yeah.
Good luck.
yeah.
All right, here we go. Act 1, the wonder years, the formative years. You grew up in a small town in southeast Nebraska, and talk about an omen for the theater. What was the name of the town?
Stella.
Stella!
Yeah. We used to live in Fall City. Then my father passed away when I was 8. And 2 years later, my mother remarried to the most wonderful stepfather the world has ever known. And we moved to the town of Stella, where, oh man, we had indoor plumbing.
Oh man, it was actually called a village, and I believe the 2020 census listed the population 150.
Now, see, I lived there in the heyday.
When it was a little bit more?
240 people.
Oh my gosh, how many were in your graduating class?
36. It was the largest graduating class of my school ever. And that school does not even exist anymore. But we were the largest class to ever graduate from that school.
So what did you do in a town, Stella? What'd you do as a kid?
We had a neighborhood filled with kids. And we spent every day outside playing. And we played war, we played cowboys. You know, we were guys, and we played all that stuff. And we would go fishing almost every day in the summer. We'd walk down the railroad tracks. It was about 2 miles to the creek.
Right.
Creek. No, I'm not from Nebraska at all. No, we would walk and we'd go fishing every day. And then as far as theater goes in the school, there was an all-school play. When I was in school, we did an all-school play because, you know, there weren't enough kids to do too much else.
So you might be guaranteed a part. For me, that'd be perfect for me because I'd be guaranteed a part.
And the first show I did, I was 12 years old. And it was Our Town. I mean, what a show to start your theater career off with, but Our Town. I played Joe the newspaper boy. And I had never done anything, of course, because I was 12. And in rehearsal one evening, there's the wedding scene with George and Emily.
Yes.
And we were all sitting in the chairs that were to be the pews. And George and Emily kissed at their wedding. And I did a little snicker, because I'm 12. And it got a laugh. And something inside my soul went, you now have a purpose.
And the voice. So when did you decide to go north, young man, and come to Omaha?
My wife and I lived in Lincoln a long time. Most of the time I was working in Omaha in theater. I lived in Lincoln because that's where our boys were going to school. We first moved there and from Fall City and lived in Lincoln, and our boys were ensconced in school there. But I was doing a show at the Lincoln Community Playhouse, and an actress I was working with, Jill Anderson, very well-known actor, director here in Omaha, she said, hey, you should go try out for the Nebraska Shakespeare Festival. It was the second year of the festival. I'd never done Shakespeare in my life. And she said, you should try out. They're having auditions. And I went, okay. And she helped me build a resume, and I worked up 2 monologues, and I auditioned, and I got in. And while I was doing Shakespeare that summer, one of the other cast members said, hey, you should get audition for the Nebraska Theater Caravan's production of Christmas Carol. They need a Jacob Marley, and they're auditioning. So I went, okay.
All right.
And I auditioned for Jacob Marley, and then one of the directors of the Playhouse, Carl Beck, and the head of the Nebraska Theater Caravan, Carolyn Rutherford, came to see me in a production I was doing, My Fair Lady, at Lincoln Community Playhouse.
All right, speaking of roles, I'm going to name some roles. You told me if you've been cast. Ready?
Okay.
Don Quixote.
Yes.
George Washington.
Yes.
The Purple Pie Man.
Yes.
The Giver.
Yes.
Denantier from Les Mis.
Yes.
What's that role you're playing now? I think people might be familiar with it. What is it?
Now I am doing a role that is part of my soul, part of my being.
Right.
I'm doing Scrooge at the
Right.
Omaha Community Playhouse.
This is like you've done it for a couple of years now. You're like the artist in residence. You play that every year.
Well, I'm the Scrooge in residence now. Jerry Lange, last year was my first year as Scrooge on the main stage. Jerry Lange retired from the role.
17 years he had done it.
Yeah,
For
he did it for 17 years. I don't think I'll make 17 years. Because I'll be 90 years old.
Your years with the Nebraska Theater Caravan. Of course, I saw some stuff on you online. You said the best part about that was I didn't go insane. Explain.
The Nebraska Theater Caravan was perhaps one of the best training grounds for actors anywhere.
Right.
In the fall, we would gather a company and we'd begin rehearsals in August, and then in September we would head out for Greater Nebraska for 7 weeks.
Man.
And we did 3 shows. We did a children's show, usually a musical, a high school show, and a general public show. And we taught workshops along the way. We would do 3 shows in a town and do workshops during the day. And we performed in spaces where theater usually isn't performed.
You're introducing people.
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of gym and cafetoriums.
Right, but you've done so much more. 92, you do a movie, oh, Pioneers, and you proclaim it's the best role I've ever had. Why?
The best role I've ever, because they threw money at me like I was.
And you all just had to lay in a.
I had to lay in a bed. For 5 days, all I did was lay in a bed and die. And it was great. And they just at the end of the shoot, they would go, here, have some of this. And they did. And I had not ever done a movie before. And they have this wonderful thing called the craft service wagon.
Right.
This is a piece of heaven that came down to earth. And what it is it's snacks and drinks and all this kind of food and stuff. And the production team, the PAs, would ask, what's your favorite snacks? What's your favorite drinks?
My gosh.
And then you would go there and they would just give this to you. And they brought in a chef from Hollywood to cook our meals.
It's like a different world. And then there was another world for you, 2002. You get into the animation world and the show Liberty Kids, which I actually remember from my young kids. Liberty Kids, you played the voice of George Washington, but also like 20 more voices?
Yeah. There was a small cadre of us, about 7 of us guys here in Omaha. And the 2 teen voices were also from here in Omaha. And the 7 of us guys, we did all the character voices running around. There was a wonderful day when we were recording, when there was a fire the scene was a fire at a shipyard in colonial America, and a ship was on fire, or a town. I don't remember because I'm old and forget.
That's my excuse.
But there was this scene of people fleeing, and mostly it was all women fleeing. And we look around the room, and they're just 7 guys. So we all got to do our best Monty Python female voices, screaming, running away from fire. It was hilarious.
All right, now give me your best. He played a character, Purple Pie Man, in the animated series, Strawberry Shortcake series in 2006. And you claim the reason you got the part because you got the song on the first take. Give me the song. You remember it?
The song. No, I don't remember the song. I remember finding the voice, though. There was another Purple Pie Man. Was a wonderful voice actor, but he passed away. And when they did this new movie, they needed a voice for the Purple Pie Man. So I listened to his voice to try to get it close, not really him, but close to what he was. And it came up with a voice that was a mixture of Billy DeWolf and Terry Thomas. For those of you that are, see, I'm old. I'm so old. Terry Thomas was the lovely British actor who had this marvelous gap in his teeth and had a wonderful way of speaking. And then Billy DeWolf, if you'll remember from the Doris Day show, he was the guy that said, I'm busy, busy, busy.
All right.
So I took that voice.
You've been busy with so many other characters. You said one of the most rewarding experiences you've ever had. You played a trans woman.
Yes.
Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert, at the esteemed Blue Barn Theater. You said it was one of the best experiences of your acting career.
That stretched me as an actor more than any role I've ever played. I played a whole lot of things, but I had never played a trans woman. And listening to me talk, you would think, what?
All right. Now, of all the roles you played, would you say you played over 50 roles or under 50 roles? Been cast in 100 plays or under 100 plays?
Over 50, over 100.
All right. Now, you've also said that you can bring your art to the character or the craft to the character. Explain.
That's the wonderful thing about theater. There is a craft to it. It's knowing how to move, how to breathe, how to use your voice, mechanically how to use your voice, how to hold yourself.
Correct.
How does this character, how he stands, how he walks, how that character moves, how they phrase a sentence. The art comes into it when you work with the director in searching for the character and the movements, and the art comes in on how you respond to other characters on the stage.
So as you combine all that with everything you've done, you're old.
Yep.
What do you think your legacy is going to be?
I hope that my legacy will be that he was so much fun to work with on stage, that he was what is known as a giving actor.
A giver.
Yeah.
The role you played.
Yeah. Because if you're I've worked with some actors. I've worked with some of the best actors this nation has to provide. And I've worked with some actors that they're on stage mainly to be on stage and show themselves.
Yeah. Now, compared to you, I'm just a minor league actor. You're a pro. I'm the minors. You know, I actually feel like I've gotten a master class in acting from the Honorable Cork Ramer. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you
for having
Stella,
me. Very
Nebraska.
much. Stella, Nebraska.
That's right. Cork Ramer. We had Michael Severe, guys who do everything for everybody. So for Cork and Michael, this is J.G. Davis in Focus. Thanks for joining us. As always, I'll see you around town.